All right, in this video, we're going to take a look at a handful of Pro Tools Ultimate automation features and how to do the equivalent of those in the regular version of Pro Tools. We thank the creator for our time today. Let's check it out. All right, so what I have here is a very simple Pro Tools session with a video file and an effects track. And I just needed some video to work together with, so I just took a little bit of footage of my dog and just edited something together. So we just had a couple scene shifts here to show automation changes. So fortunately, it just kind of worked out that we had just taken him to the groomer the day before. I went outside to do this with him, so he doesn't look like he's been rummaging around in the woods for the last 2 months like he loves to do. So that all worked out pretty good too. All right, so under the Edit menu, Automation submenu, we have Write to Current, Write to All Enabled, Trim to Current, Trim to All Enabled, Glide to Current, Glide to All Enabled, okay? And I'm just going to show what these look like in Pro Tools Ultimate and then the equivalent of these in Pro Tools Standard software. So we're going to start with Write to Current, and we're going to start with our first scene, for example. So we have scene 1 here. I'm going to make my selection between these two memory locations here. And we're going to start with our volume view because volume is the simplest to show this. Write to Current means that you're locking in the value for the playlist, the automation playlist or lane that you're looking at currently, right? This is the current playlist is volume, and I want to lock in whatever that position is. So right now in the automation window, we can write everything. Everything is enabled right now, but Write to Current locks in only what you're actually looking at and what you're viewing on screen. So for example, I'm just going to use the Pro Tools Ultimate quick key for Write to Current, which is Control/. And when I press those two keys together, it puts a breakpoint here at the end of the selection. It just locks that position in, right? Now I want a different fader position for the next scene. And so I want this to be, let's say, minus whatever, right? -4. And so I set my new fader position and I Control/ write that to the current view. And so the current playlist now has been updated with a drop of 4 dB for the length of that selection. And that's what Write to Current is. Now, obviously, in any version of Pro Tools, it's simple enough just to go in with your trim tool and say, okay, I made a selection. I want that new level to be here, and you're done. What you have to keep in mind is that a lot of people using Pro Tools Ultimate are also using a controller desk. And so if you're on an S3, an S6, an S1, you are setting a fader using a real fader. I want that fader position to be about here, and then you press a button for Write to Current, and it locks that in. So you don't use the keyboard and mouse necessarily right in front of your face when you're sitting at a fader desk. It's kind of the other way around. You're trying to get that graphic editing behavior while using a fader and a couple buttons on a mixing desk, at the same time. So Write to Current is kind of okay. It's not really anything to miss on the standard version of Pro Tools. But the way that you would do it, right, if I need to write this new value of -4, I'm going to go down to -4 again, and if I need to write this new value in to the current view, I need to use write mode for that. And what am I writing? Well, write mode is locking in a breakpoint on everything that's enabled, which right now is everything in the session. So I need to take all of this other stuff off, or I'm going to have breakpoints in every view in the background for everything I'm doing. So I need to write automation because write mode begins writing immediately as soon as I press play. And I only want to write for volume. And this is what it would look like, okay? A new value being written 4 dB lower and only for volume in automation write mode. That's the equivalent of Write to Current. Now, Write to All Enabled is a little bit more fun. It's a little bit more interesting because it involves a lot of automation layers. And the most fun we can have with this is with plugin automation, which is why we have this reverb here. So we're going to go back to write mode just so we're ready for that. The parameters of the reverb are not enabled for automation yet. We do that by holding down all three modifiers, Control, Start, and Alt, and click on the Auto button. Everything now is enabled for automation, and so it's ready for my quick key or my automation pass, whichever version of Pro Tools I want to do this with. So for example, what I want to do is I want to take a plugin preset and I want to lock that in for the first scene, right? For the first scene here, we are inside. So I'm going to find we'll use our vintage, I don't even know what that means. Let's see, drum room. We'll use our drum room preset here. And so I'm going to go, the quick key for Write to All enabled in Pro Tools Ultimate is Control-Alt-/. And we're not looking at a plugin view. So if I go to reverb time, you can see there's a breakpoint there. For spread, there's a breakpoint there. So all of these, everything that's enabled has been locked into position. We go to the next scene. And where's my selection? Get back here. There we go. We go to the next scene, selection, and our preset needs to change, right, to this other thing. And so from here to here, new plugin preset, Control-Alt/, Write to All enabled, everything is locked into position. This is single-handedly the coolest quick key in Pro Tools Ultimate because it's plugin preset automation at the press of a couple keys, and you're done, right? And there's a lot of different ways you can use this, and it's a lot of fun. So I have one preset here, and I have a completely different preset back here, or I should, if I did that right. Here's one, here's the other. Let's see, plugin automation, right? Well, all that's fine. What happened back here? So boost, I'm going to boost, Control-Alt/, to lock in the boost preset here and here. I think the plugin is just not viewing properly because of the mode here. I just want it to read back. Okay, so that's what's happening there. Go back to read mode, and we can see that it's toggling. When you're using the quick key in Pro Tools Ultimate, you're not in an automation mode. You're just using quick keys to lock in, the presets along the way. So it's not something I'm used to thinking about a whole lot. But if I undo a couple of these settings, right, then this is what it looks like in Pro Tools Standard to do the same thing. Everything in the plugin is enabled for automation using the automation window there. I have plugin automation only that I want to write, and I want to do this in write mode. So I pick the preset that I want, okay, and I press play. And what I'm doing right now is locking in the value, okay, for everything in this preset. And then I change my position, and I want to now have a different preset for this selection, change the preset to something else, go back to write mode, and instead of using a quick key, I'm just pressing play and waiting for the pass, okay? So this literally took 3 to 4 seconds longer for this to happen because I have to do it as a real-time pass in write mode. And we can see the reverb time changed, the room size changed, mix percentage isn't changing there. But all of these, right, is a new preset at that next selection. So you can do the equivalent of Write to All enabled. You just have to literally write to what is enabled between your automation window and the plugin that you're trying to lock everything in for. The challenge to that is just for how long the scene is, right? My last scene here is a decent length. So it's for things like this where you have a preset you want to lock in, and the only way to do it is just to wait for that pass to happen. And so this is the thing that's time consuming. If you're doing a lot of independent film projects, things like that, you could have a scene that goes on for several minutes. So you just have to do a play pass for that selection to update the preset for that length. And there's really, there technically is a better way to do it, which I'm going to show you in a video at the end of this one. But that is really the only way, right, to do it in Pro Tools Standard is that you have to do this real-time stuff and wait for all of that to happen. So, okay. So that's a look at the write to current, write to all enabled stuff. So let's switch over to the trim stuff. I think for the trim stuff, I'm just going to go back to volume for this example. And for volume, I'm just going to kind of fake this for a moment. I'm going to hold a couple keys down here. And so a couple modifiers here with the Smart tool. I'm holding down Start and Control. That's giving me the freehand pencil tool based on what I'm doing right now. And so I just have a volume curve in here, okay? So I'm looking at volume. This is my current playlist. And I have breakpoints and automation in here. What I really want to do is bring all of that down, several dB. So I'm bringing the fader down. And so a trim to current, here's the quick key for trim to current, is just taking the curve that's in place and I don't have volume enabled here. It's basically telling me I don't have volume enabled in my automation window there. I do now. So we'll go trim to current, and the entire curve comes down by the amount of that deduction, right? About 5 dB or so was the difference there. That is the equivalent in any version of Pro Tools of going here and just holding the control key down so you can do a really fine adjustment here that's exactly 5 dB lower. Exactly. There we go. And it's the same thing as doing that, right? And so there really is no equivalent of that in the standard version of Pro Tools. You're just using your trim tool to do that. Now, in your second option in here, trim to all enabled, the problem with trim to all enabled is that I could have a plugin in Pro Tools Ultimate. So let's just do it this way. All right. Let's say that I have a preset in the background here. I'm just going to switch back over so we're seeing reverb time. We know we already have a preset in play here. But let's say that I have automation in here, and I don't know how likely this is, but I'm going to do reverb time automation, and then I'm going to go over here to the room size, and I'm going to do, some automation there. And then I'm going to go to ambience, and I'm just going to do some automation here. Okay, so you can probably see where this is going. I'm going to make this selection. I'm going to pull the reverb time, make these like really obvious. What did I do? Room size, ambience, just making these huge changes, right? And so I pulled them down a lot. So really what that means is the curve on each of those should come down quite a bit. Make sure I'm in plugin automation here to do this. So now if I go to automation and trim to all enabled, you can see the curve for room size came down, reverb time, that curve came down, ambience, that curve came down. So you could have the majority of all of your settings in place and, have a couple changes to a couple of them and adjust them all simultaneously to their new values. And if I did write to all enabled, this would be a straight line all the way through. So where you have active automation within that selection, and maybe it would make more sense if you had several presets and you were doing it for a whole group of scenes. If I'm here and I want all of my presets, all of my reverb times to drop a little bit, across the board, then that would be one way to do it. Just take the reverb time down a little bit, take the room size down a little bit. And that would be a trim. So essentially all of your presets are updating by the amount that you wanted to change for those two parameters only. It'd be an example of how that would work, okay? There is no equivalent to that in Pro Tools Standard. And I think that's a really deep automation, feature to have. But just pointing it out to you, that's the one thing that you're really not, you're going to go to each individual parameter and make an adjustment when you're doing that kind of stuff. And there's some creative fun, I think, to be had in that, but that's just an example there. Okay, so let's talk about the glide stuff. We have glide to current, glide to all enabled here. So I'm going to select all automation in here, just triple clicking, double clicking. I'm going to go to edit, clear special, all automation. and just wipe everything out underneath. So for the glide, let's say that I'm in volume view here. Now I'm in volume view. And I'm just going to lock in a breakpoint for volume. Volume is off. So I'm just going to lock in a breakpoint for volume. Now, if I click here and I do another write to current, right? We did this a moment ago. If I do Control/, a write to current is a jump. So a glide to current, if I pull this down and I do Alt, I believe it's Alt/, then it's putting in a single breakpoint for this new value, and that just means it's a glide, right? So for a volume change here, this isn't, we're not reinventing the wheel or doing anything, magnificent here necessarily. And it's just as easy to put a breakpoint and to drag that down graphically. And so there's a number of ways to do that. You could also take the line pencil tool and you could just draw a line here, right? So the line pencil tool is going to do whatever you do in that way as well. So glide automation is just putting in one breakpoint instead of two, instead of making a jump. Now, more specifically, just to lead into what glide to all enabled is, I'm going to do this another way to show you how to do this in real time, which no one is ever going to do because it's kind of silly, but this is what it would look like, okay? I want my, we'll keep it on volume just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to go into write mode. I want to write volume only, and I want to write, this value, and we're going to do a pass. Okay. And then from here to here, I want to write this value, go into write mode, and do a pass. All right, so the point of this here would be that I really have just done two write to currents, the equivalent of that. So how do I make this a glide? Well, the way you make it a glide is you select the transition and just delete it, and you end up with glide behavior, okay? So this is a foreshadowing. You're not really going to do this with one single parameter. I think that took way too long compared to our other options. But it sets up how we use glide to all enabled in Pro Tools Standard, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the plugin stuff. And I'm going to do a glide to all enabled, a morph, using this. And I guess I want to show this first, show the whole point of this on screen here. So we'll go with, we'll just go to scene 2 to scene 3, right, for this position. So I want my reverb to change and to morph over time. We just did volume. We did one parameter, big whoop, no big deal there. But if I want to do it to a whole bunch of parameters at a time, this is where things get complicated. So a glide to all enabled means that we're doing that for every parameter in this plugin. Plugin automation only right now. So I want to do a write to current, and I want my presets to start here. And so I'm just going to do a write to all enabled, excuse me. We're going to start with a write to all enabled, Control-Alt /. And if I check all of my plugin parameters, there's a breakpoint there, here, here, here. Breakpoints everywhere, right? So we locked in that position. Now we go here, we just change the preset entirely. And now we do a glide to all enabled instead of a write to all enabled. So we're going Shift-Alt /. And now all of our parameters here are gliding from their first position to their second position, okay? And this is a really cool way to do really cool reverb effects, to do distortion effects, to do all kinds of things where the entire plugin is morphing and changing over time. Glide to all enabled is amazing. It's awesome, okay? Now, how do we do that in Pro Tools Standard? So in Pro Tools Standard, this is the overall length, right, that I need to affect. So at some point, I just need to make two selections and do the equivalent of two write to all enables in Pro Tools Standard. So here's what it looks like, right? We just do this one step at a time. I'm going to change the automation mode here to write. I'm writing plugin only, and I'm starting with my first preset, and I'm pressing play. I have just locked in that value, right? Those values. Now I don't have a breakpoint at the front because I don't have any other automation back here. So it's just locking in a breakpoint at the end for me right now. So understand, if I needed a specific breakpoint for a value here, you would have to go back here and do an automation pass just to create a breakpoint to lock everything into a position first. And so I am actually going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do that back here. So I'm going to undo my automation pass. I'm just going to go back to write mode and press play. And write mode has just put a breakpoint for every parameter in the reverb in there, okay? And then I'm going to pick just a different preset here to start with, and go back into write mode. And now that it's a different value, it has to put a new breakpoint at the beginning and the end, okay? So taking an extra minute to do this, but I want to make sure I'm explaining it better and make sure that I'm trying to make it as little confusing as possible. So we're going to press play here, and there's our first preset. And then we're going to select, it doesn't actually matter, I'll go from here to here. Can be a really short selection, actually. We're just going to go like this. And we're going to pick a different preset, right? I'll go with the stadium preset here. Go back into write mode and press play. Okay, now this could look really confusing because we just have breakpoints all over the place. What's the whole point of this, right? Well, I'm trying to get a glide from this preset to this one, from this breakpoint to this one. So the way that I do that now is I just select all of the breakpoints in between, and I go to Edit and Clear Special All Automation. Really, I only have plugin automation, so I could just do plugin automation here as well. But what you're left with is a glide to every parameter. So you can do this in Pro Tools Standard, right? This is what it takes, is it takes a right and a right, and then you select all the breakpoints in between and do a clear special all automation to wipe all of that out. And now you're left with a gliding effect in the standard version of Pro Tools, okay? So that's how to do a couple of those things in Pro Tools Standard. I hope that's helpful to you. I know it's helpful to some of you, especially who are using that license. You could be doing a lot of editing and things for post. You don't have the quick keys, but you can still do a lot of the automation features and still make a lot of those things work. You're just going to take a little bit of extra time to do your automation passes. Okay, so have fun with a couple of those things. Go create something. And check out this video that I have made that talks about the value of instrument tracks when it comes to automation. And that's going to take things up a level for you and change some of your workflows for the better. I'll see you soon.